Right, so we're going to be starting soon. Right, okay. Good evening, everyone. I've actually got my lab coat this time, so when I call myself Professor NK, it makes a bit more sense. We've got two viewers in the room at the moment, so we'll just start off with some introductions. So do say hi in the chat. Hopefully you can all hear me fairly well at the moment. If you can't, let me know. I'll move my computer forward or speak up a little bit. Um, so yeah, do feel free to say hi in the chat. Samuel said hi. Hi, Samuel. I hope you're well. Hope you've done well today. Sadana, you've also said hi. Hello. Hi. Manish. Hi. Nice to see you. Revex Knight, another returner. Thank you. Hi. Good to see you again this evening at 5 o'clock on a Thursday for another My Tutor Study Squad. Exciting times. Um, I hope you're all well. It rained a lot today, so I hope all of you are keeping really warm. The weather's getting a bit unbearable at the moment. Um, yeah, so I hope you're all staying safe. Okay, I think what we'll do is yeah, Rubex Knight. Yeah, you said thanks. You're welcome. You're more than welcome. Yeah, Samuel, getting to that winter season, honestly, that's the thing about winter. It's always nice when you're inside, but when you're out and about, when you're at work, or even just going to the shops, it's a challenge. I think it's probably the nicest way of putting it. It's an absolute challenge, honestly. Um, and I'm well, Rubik's Night. Thank you. It's been busy. As you can see, I've done a little bit of editing. I added a cool little background for the stream for this week. So hopefully, the quality gets better over time because we're all about good quality streams and good production value. Uh, Manish said it's cold. It is very cold, actually. Um, but then, with energy bills, putting up the heating is not an option either. Yikes, honestly. That's why I'm drinking tea. I've got some Earl Grey here. I'm not sponsored by Earl Grey at all. I wish I was, but I'm not. But it does the job. It's an alternative to putting up the heating anyway. Let's see. Okay, so I think we'll give it a couple more minutes. See if anyone else decides to pop in, and then we'll get started on an exciting session. I think actually in all the sessions that I planned, this is actually one of my favourite types of topics. Um, without giving everything away, this week's going to be all about positivity. Um, and I guess the reason it's my favourite is because positivity as a concept, I think it's something that we're taught about from a very young age. It's something that we're almost encouraged to practice. But I think it's something that can be quite challenging as a student, particularly when it comes to a subject that maybe you don't really like or one that you just find challenging as a whole. So, um, I'm really looking forward to sort of sharing some of my thoughts with all of you about the importance of positivity as a student and how it can help you study a bit better. So really excited for that. Let's see. Hopefully the music's not too loud. I have a little bit of music on in the background. If you can't hear it, that's absolutely fine. I just don't want it to drown out what I'm saying anyway. Hopefully it doesn't. Exciting, but can't hear it at all. Okay. I'll turn it up a little bit. How's that? Can we hear that a bit more, or is it still a bit quiet? It's a bit of a balance, actually, isn't it, between having music on in the background, yes, but quiet. Okay, fantastic. If it's quiet, that's all I want. I don't want it to overpower what I'm saying. Um, so that's the main thing, anyway. Um, Excellent. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we've got 6 people in the room now. 6 people. So I think I'll probably get started in the next couple of minutes or so. I think. Yeah. We'll give it one or 2 more minutes, and then we'll get right into it. Anything exciting for anyone this week? Um, Anything to share? How's everyone doing with SMART goals? Has anyone found themselves using any SMART goals or any aspects of SMART goals following on from our last session? It would be interesting to know if anyone has. Excellent. We've got 7 viewers now. Okay. I think I think what I might do is just get started. Actually, yeah. I think I'll get started, and then if anyone else sort of pops in, then by all means, they are more than welcome to join. Rightio. Right. So, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Wonderful students. My name is Professor NK or Nketia, either one. And I will be your tutor for this week's study squad, where we're focusing on study skills and how we can improve your experience as a student and how we can improve the way that you study so that you can be the best student that you can be. Now, last week we spent a bit of time looking at SMART goals, okay, and we spent some time thinking about what SMART goals are. Now, some of you already knew what SMART goals were. Some of you already use SMART goals as a student, and some of you didn't, and that's absolutely fine. We talked about the importance of goal setting and how we can structure our goals and tailor them in such a way that it improves our success rate as a student. We talked about the importance of your goals being specific. We talked about the importance of your goals being measurable, attainable, um, you know, representative of you, and time bound. So we talked about all these different things, and we came to the conclusion that actually there are a good few skills, a good few gems in there that we can use as students to help us study a bit better. And so what I want to do in this week's session is talk a little bit about positivity, and sort of get a dialogue going in the chat and during the session, to try and understand a bit more about what your experiences have been with respect to the idea of positivity as a student. But I'd also like to sort of introduce how that element of positivity can help you as a student. Um, I think the term "be positive" is something that you hear about a fair amount. You're told to be positive, but I think that can be quite challenging. And I'm just going to slip over to the PowerPoint. I think being positive can be very challenging, particularly when you are faced with a subject or even a topic within a subject that you find quite challenging. So I know a few of you mentioned biology last week. A few of you mentioned chemistry, physics, maths. Spanish was also mentioned, actually. And it can be quite daunting to try and be positive about a subject which you may feel is a little bit hopeless. But what I want to do is I want to challenge that thinking. And actually what you'll find as a student is being positive, particularly about the subjects that you feel the least positive about, can really make a difference when it comes to studying. And that can translate to either studying a bit longer, studying more effectively, or results in exams after you've studied, because you've gone in with a positive mindset rather than a pessimistic one. Does that sound good to everyone? Just pop a yes in the chat if that sounds like a plan. If it doesn't, then by all means. Hopefully, it sounds like a plan to everyone. Manish, you said yes, thank you. I'm glad it sounds like a plan. Ravex Knight, again, thank you for also saying yes. I'm glad it sounds like a plan. Sadana, thank you. Yes, I'm glad it sounds like a plan. And Samuel, thank you. That it also sounds like a plan. So let's get right into it then. Now, positivity. Let's talk about this. Now, I'm going to do something a bit interesting. I wanted to do this last week, but I wasn't able to because of technical difficulties. And in all honesty, I was also getting used to the software for streaming. Um, but I want to use something called Mentimeter. Now, Mentimeter, some of you may have heard of it before, some of you may have even used it in school. Um, it's a really, really cool presentation, well, not presentation, sort of software which you that we can use to almost share ideas and sort of so I can sort of get an understanding as to what your thoughts are about a certain idea. Okay, and I can just setting up the Mentimeter now. In essence, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a code in the chat, in the live chat, and what that will do is it will take you to a page where a question that I've asked you'll see. And what I want you to do is I want you just to write or type, depending on what device you're using. I want you to type what words come to mind when you see the word positivity. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you or get the Mentimeter up now. So if you just give me a moment, let's have a look here. Let me have a look. There we go on Q&A. Positivity. Okay, so do that. Done. Okay, let's have a look here. In the instance that this doesn't work, actually, in the interest of time, I want you just to sort of pop in the chat box what you guys think of the word positivity. What comes to mind when you think of the word positivity? Let's just get some ideas going. I don't think Mentimeter is on my side today, but I promise I'll get it sorted next week. But let's just pop it in the chat for now. So Manish, you said happiness. I definitely agree with that. I think the idea of happiness comes to mind when I think of positivity. Ravex Knight, you said enthusiastic. I definitely agree with that. Manish, you've also said being strong. I like that one. Strength. I think strength is an interesting one because quite often when we think of strength, we tend to think of, like weights in the gym and stuff. But I think strength can also lead on to perseverance, which is what Sadhana's also said. And it can be about mentality. It can be emotional strength as well. So I think that was a really good contribution. Thank you for that. Samuel, you said mindset. I really like that. So, positivity is a mindset. So sometimes it's about changing the way you think rather than an action. Okay, it's a change of mindset. Manish, you've also said how you think, so I definitely agree with that. Farah, thank you for joining us this evening. You've said seeing things on the bright side. I like that. And the reason I quite like that one is because as a student, I can remember that there were many times in which I sat either an exam or an end-of-topic test, and I found that sometimes the result I wanted wasn't the result that I got. But sometimes, and what I found was that by thinking of it on the bright side, things became a bit easier to manage. So even if I didn't necessarily achieve what I wanted to achieve, that was okay because I was able to identify where I'd gone wrong, and then I was then able to make changes. So, the thank you for that. Manish also said thinking positively, so love that. I really love the engagement again. Thank you guys. I'm really, really grateful for all the engagement that you're giving in the live chat. I think it's brilliant. So I would agree with all of you. Now, positivity is a good thing for a variety of reasons. Okay? And I suppose the reason, or the many reasons, or one in particular that positivity is important, particularly as a student, is because it helps you carry on with whatever difficulty you're facing. Now, I'm going to share with you all the story as to when I did A level chemistry, which, given my age, feels like ages ago. um, so it was year 12, and we had our first Unit 1 exam. Not the actual exam, or sort of like a mid-year, like a mock. And I remember I spent, after we found out that we were having this mock exam, I spent hours, did an all-nighter, reading over the textbook over and over again. I kid you not. I think I got about 4 hours of sleep, maybe five. Now, I wouldn't endorse that to any student. All-nighters don't work. You don't retain information. Um, and what I found, actually, was during the exam, I answered a few questions, and then I kid you not, I fell asleep. I'm sure some of you in the chat right now, I'm expecting a few laughing emojis. By all means, it's well deserved. Falling asleep in the middle of a mock because you did an all-nighter, um, understandable, right? Um, and I walked away from that mock exam, and unfortunately, I didn't get the grade that I wanted. Ravex Knight said, "No, it happened to me." It happens, Um, although Ravex said that they didn't really sleep for 5 hours, so I, it's understandable, and that's why it's important to get rest. And one of the things that we'll talk about later on in this series is the importance of self-care as a student, because sometimes I think with all the pressure that students face, it can be really, really easy to forget about really basic things like getting enough sleep, making sure that you eat well, whatever your basic diet is, staying hydrated, all these things. So we will talk about that later on in the series. That's something I do have planned. But getting back to the story, I fell asleep. I didn't get the grade that I wanted. Um, and I was actually quite annoyed about it. And I kicked myself a bit because I thought, well, had I studied before and maybe had I not done an all-nighter, I could have done better. And that's quite negative thinking. And what you find, actually, is negative thinking is very unproductive. Okay? Now, as a student, one of the things that I think we all find quite challenging is the concept of achieving less than what we're aiming for. Okay? Um, now, oh dear, I'm getting a phone call. Don't know why. I tell you what, let me decline that. So sorry about that, guys. But yes, getting back to what I was saying, um, the idea of achieving less than what you would like to is quite difficult, and inevitably, then we then focus on the negative aspects of things. Manish, you said you need to put your health before your studies. Absolutely, definitely agree with that. You have to put your health before your studies. Now, there is a quote from Gillian Michaels which says, "It's not about perfect, it's about effort." Now, I just want you all to share what you think about that phrase. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you think effort is important? Do you think effort is, in some instances, more important than the result sometimes, is what I would say? Do you think putting in effort sometimes, saying that is satisfactory? What do you all think? What comes to mind when you read that quote? It's not about perfect, it's about effort. So Manish, you said that you agree because if you don't put effort in, you won't get better. Definitely agree with that. It is about effort. Revex Knight, you concur with Manish. Love that. Yeah, no, I would agree. I would definitely agree. I agree with both of you. And the reason that's important is that your experience as a student is gradual. Okay, from pre-GCSE to GCSE to A level. Okay, there's gradual progression, and you'll need to put in effort all the time. Now, one of the things that we talked about last week was the importance of your goals being measurable. Now, one of the reasons your goals need to be measurable is so that you can see how you've done over time. If we just add a little bit of positivity in there, you can see that your mindset and your approach to studying, you'll see a world of a difference. Let's say, for instance, okay, and I'm going to use myself as an example. Let's say I go back to year 12, and initially I found moles calculations quite difficult. Okay? Now, let's say I then said, okay, well, I'm going to try some questions, and I'm going to try and get five correct. And I try, and as I get four correct on the first attempt, 4 out of 10 correct, I could do one of two things. I could either say, well, I didn't get a five, so I'm not going to bother anymore. Or what I could do is say, okay, well, I got four this time, so that's my starting point. But I think I can get five the next time, and this is what I'm going to do to get there. And see, just in that thinking, you give yourself a sense of motivation. You set yourself a goal which is measurable, in that you're going to aim for five correct calculations out of 10 this time. And you've added in that level of positivity. You've given yourself the encouragement that you need to push yourself to get five correct the next time instead of four. And then over time, it'll go up. So it'll go up to five, and then six, and then seven. And before you even realize it, you'll be getting 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. And there's no secret formula at all, okay? Because as your professor for this study squad, I thoroughly believe that every single individual in this room is more than capable of achieving whatever it is that they want to achieve. But to do that, you need to support yourself and you need to be positive. You can't expect a positive outcome if you go into the activity with a negative outlook. Sadani, you said that self-motivation is key. 100%. Self-motivation is key. Now, that isn't to say that you can't get motivation from those around you, and we're going to talk about that really soon in this week's session, but motivate yourself, okay? And you can motivate yourself in different ways, whether that's, if I achieve X, I will go out and I'll treat myself to something in particular, whether it's like a video game or a good book or something. Manish, you said that if you don't believe in yourself, you won't get better. That is true. I'm really loving the wisdom that's coming out of the live chat at the moment. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I'm really, really proud of you as your professor. So thank you. Right. So let's move on to the next slide then. Now I have a question for you all. Is there such a thing as a limit to how positive you can be? If so, why? If not, why? So is there such a thing as a limit to how positive you can be? Let's see. I don't think there is a limit because you can always get better. So that's what Manish said. Yeah, well, perfect. Okay. So you've said that there isn't a limit because you can always get better. I would agree with that because it's true. There's always room for improvement. Rave X and I has said there is a limit. And Harry hasn't followed up by saying, yes, you've got to be realistic. Okay. All right. Well, firstly, hi Harry. Thank you for joining the session today. And actually, this is actually quite an interesting point because I now want us to have a bit of a discussion about where positivity sort of phases into, let's say, unrealistic. Okay. Now, Sadhana has said no. The more positive you are, the more motivated you'll be to do, so the faster you can improve. And Ray Vexner has then gone on to say, because positivity comes from negativity, the more negative you have experienced, the more positivity you'll get. Okay, and Ray Vexner sort of said, think of it as adding protons and neutrons to balance it. Okay, so I suppose what we've gotten there is the idea that positivity and negativity are in a bit of a balance. Okay, so yeah, we can think about it that way. Now, one of the things that I wanted to discuss here, and this is actually an interesting and a good point that Harry has made, that with positivity, you also need to remember what is attainable, what's realistic. Okay, and I think the difficulty that we have as students is that we conflate positivity and unrealistic, and we conflate negativity with being realistic. And I think that's the challenging thing. Let's say, for instance, we're going to go back to, or actually, let's come up with an example. One of you in the live chat, give me an example of a situation where, let's say, you've aspired to achieve something, and possibly you've not quite reached it. If you don't want to share, then by all means, that's also okay. Remember, this is a completely safe space. There is zero judgment here. So if you do want to share, then by all means do so. And if not, that's also okay. I'm more than happy to share an experience of my own as an example. So you think, okay, we'll give it a couple of minutes in case anyone wants to share. If not, then I think I'll share. So let me have a think. One thing that comes to mind actually. Try to get better. Oh, so Harry said, try to get better at art, not that good at it. You know what? Funny story. When I was it was in year 9, and everyone remembers that point in year 9 where you're picking your GCSEs. And I remember my art teacher, bless him, at parents' evening, um, the I guess in the politest way possible, he said something to the effects of, "NK is lovely to have in lessons, but I don't think art is it's not for him." And it's something that I laugh about now, actually, because art isn't for me. In fact, in any lessons that I give to students, I always comment that my hand-drawn diagrams are a bit naff. So, totally understandable. Okay. Ravex Knight, you said that you don't want to do foundation, you want to do higher. Okay. So, that's also understandable. That's fine. I remember when I wanted to be predicted an A star for biology, and at the time my teacher said, "I'm just going to predict you an A because of your UMS in year 12," which I could semi understand, but I wanted to be predicted higher. So I understand that. Farah, you've said that you were really confident stepping into an exam, and then the exam didn't go the way you wanted it to. So, again, all these examples are more than understandable, and I thank you so much for being open and sharing that with me and with everyone else. I know that's not always easy to do. Now, one of the things that I would always say is every opportunity that you're given as a student is an example for you to grow. It's an example for you to reflect and learn so that you can get better in the future. Now, let's say, for instance, we take Farah's example, okay, because that's something that's happened to me. What I would say is that in terms of that fine line between positivity and being realistic or unrealistic, it's really a case of looking at what happened and then having a bit of a think as to what you can do better next time. Okay? So let's say, for instance, so with me, let's take chemistry, for instance. Okay? Any single time I got a result that I wasn't happy with, I could say, okay, well, I can do better next time. Just using that phrase, I can do better next time, already introduces the element of positivity into your mindset as a student, and it does make a difference. What then determines the element as to whether or not your goal is attainable or not, though, is how much you say you'll get better by, and also your time frame. So now you're beginning to see, hopefully, how the SMART goals chat we had last week ties into what I'm talking about with positivity. None of you in the room, and I don't expect any of you to get 100% in every single exam that you sit. It would be nice, but no one expects that of you. And I think when you have such a high expectation in some instances, it puts pressure on you. And inevitably, it pushes you into a negative mindset when inevitably you wouldn't necessarily want that. Does that make sense? So what I would say is, let's say an exam doesn't go the way you want it to. Well, you could look at your paper and say, okay, well, this is where I did well, and this is where I didn't do well. So these are the areas that I need to focus on. Okay? And that's what you can do. And that's where positivity meets realism. Because then you're not saying, I'm going to go over and above to the point where it's unattainable. Because like we talked about last week, we want to make sure our goals are attainable so that we keep motivating ourselves. But we also want to add the element of positivity so that we motivate ourselves. Manish, you said that it makes you a bit sour when you don't achieve your goals, but you can think on the positive side. I would definitely agree with that. You can think on the positive side. Okay, that's incredibly important. Okay, it's important that you take every opportunity that you're given as a student as an opportunity to learn. Now, Harry, in our case, with art, we might not get better, we might do, but let's try and think positively. Hopefully, with time, my artwork will, at the very least, be understandable. Someone can understand that I've drawn, let's say, a cow and not a car, and people don't conflate the two. That's kind of where my art skill is at the moment. But has everything that I've said made sense to everyone? Just drop a yes in the chat if it has. Drop a no in the chat if it hasn't. If you disagree with me, then let's have the type of conversation maybe towards the end of the session. Manish, you said yes, so thank you. Sedana, you said yes. Farah, you said a thumbs up. Love that. So I'm glad that you understood that as well. Fantastic. Okay, how's everyone enjoying the live stream? Has everyone found it useful so far? Everyone found it intuitive? Have you picked up some knowledge that that maybe you didn't have before? Okay, so Harry, so Harry, I'm glad that we understand each other there. I think with you, since you've still got your target grades, there's definitely still hope for you to get better. I may have given up, but for my students that I tutor, I think I'll definitely try and keep my artwork improving where I can. But we'll see how that gets on. Watch this space is the short answer. Okay, fantastic. Let's keep cracking then. So I've already sort of talked about this a little bit. We talked about SMART goals last week, and we talked about how your goals need to be specific, how they need to be measurable, how they need to be attainable, how they need to be relevant to you, and how they need to be time bound as well. And the R could also be realistic, relevant, realistic, up to you. Okay. Now, again, positivity, think of it almost as something which you can add to your SMART goals. If your goal as being smart is your foundation, then adding the element of positivity is an extra layer that you can put on that will help you in terms of achieving your goals that much further. So let's break down SMART goals again, and let's think a little bit about how positivity is involved. So S, your goals need to be specific. So questions you can ask yourself are, who's involved? What is it that you want to accomplish? Why is the goal important? Now, I want to highlight that last question. Why is the goal important? Thinking about why your goal is important can be a huge source of motivation. And in just asking yourself that question, you can find a lot of positivity in that. So, full time, I'm a pharmacist. And one of the reasons that I pushed myself through my degree was because every single time I went on a placement, I got to see how other pharmacists and other clinicians in a hospital setting worked really, really hard to care for patients. And that made me feel really good. Even now, every single time I go to work, it doesn't matter how long the day has been, I find so much positivity in just seeing the difference that I get to make in patients' lives. Now, for all of you as students, you may not necessarily know what you want to do yet, and that's okay, because life evolves as you do. But what I would say is that if you already have a rough idea or an image in mind, sometimes thinking as to why your goal is important can bring with it a level of positivity. So, for instance, let's say one of your goals is that you want to get better at biology or a language. And let's say that you think that goal is important because it will mean that you get to do something in the future. That sense of motivation is the perfect opportunity for you to share some of that positivity with yourself. Because then you can tell yourself, I know I'll be really good at that in the future, and I'll get there. As a man, she said that life has its ups and downs. Would definitely agree. Life is a roller coaster, and that is why, especially now, it's really important that you appreciate, you appreciate the highs and you appreciate the lows, because you get to experience something new every single time. Now, Harry, you've asked what the best way is to figure out what you want to do. You're thinking about going into law, but you're not too sure if it's for you. Totally understandable. I didn't always know that I wanted to get into pharmacy. I knew I wanted to do something healthcare related, something sciencey, but I didn't necessarily know pharmacy. I would say placements, sort of like work-based placements. That's not the phrase. It's work experience. That's it. It's been a long day. Work experience. If you can get work experience, then by all means, that would be great. So ask around in your school. I know a lot of schools sort out work experience opportunities. You could always go online as well and see what people who are in that profession also say about their role and what it is that they do on a regular basis. So research is what I would say. Farah, you said join clubs too. Yeah, no, that's a brilliant shout actually. So any clubs that are related to what you might be looking into, join them, and then that can give you some hands-on experience with what it is that you might want to do. I think the one thing that I would say from a student perspective is that it's never too late to change. Okay, never feel as though you have to box yourself in one direction. Right, keep open-minded. But really good question, and Farah, thank you for helping me answer that as well. But I hope that makes sense in terms of specificity and how positivity relates to specificity in terms of goal setting. So in terms of things being measurable, now I talked about this not too long ago, but it's really important that your goals are measurable because it means that you can see how you've gotten on. Now, I'm not too sure about all of you in the room. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, will agree with me, but there is no better feeling than seeing that you've improved in something. What's even better is when you hear from someone else that they can see that you've gotten better, whether that's from a teacher, whether that's from a friend, whether that's from your parents, or just saying it to yourself. Sometimes, for me, it was always seeing it on an end of term report, seeing teachers saying, Nketia has improved in X, Y, and Z. That made me feel really good about myself. And actually, if you've ever doubted the importance of positivity as a student, what I would say is it can make a world of difference because then you have proof that you are capable. Positivity doesn't have to be a concept that is airy or doesn't have much substance. Goals being measurable and you attaining those goals over time are first-hand empirical evidence that you are capable of achieving whatever your goal is. And so just by adding an element of positivity to that and to that evidence, what you find is that you then push yourself even further. And that's incredibly important. I hope that makes sense for everyone. If it doesn't, let me know. But if it does, also let me know. Rebecca, like you said yes, so I'm glad that's made sense. Has that made sense for everyone? I'll give it a couple of minutes and then we'll keep moving. Manish, you said yes. I'm glad it's made sense to you as well. Absolutely fantastic. Glad to hear that. Sadana, you said yes as well. Thank you. Glad to hear that as well. Um, Fantastic. Right. So let's move on to the next slide then. Attainable. Oh, and Harry, you've also said yes. Thank you for that. I suppose this one sort of speaks for itself, really. Your goals being attainable is incredibly important, and it's important because, again, it helps you set a record almost. It helps you keep track of where you've been and what you've achieved over time. Now, as to how positivity ties into that, I'm sure most of you have probably already figured it out. So I'm actually going to hand this question over to all of you, and I want you guys to answer. How do you think positivity can relate to your goals being attainable? What are your general thoughts? I'll give you guys 5 minutes. So no rush. Just type anything that you'd like to. Do share your thoughts. So what does everyone think about how does positivity relate to your goals being attainable? What do we all think? So, Sadana, you've said when you reach your goals, it makes you feel good. But if you make a goal that's not attainable, then it wouldn't help to boost your confidence. Excellent. So, I would definitely agree with that one. Um, the important thing to remember is that you don't want to set yourself up for, to not reach your goal. I don't want to use the word failure because I think that's quite a negative word. You don't want to set yourself up to not achieve your goal because if you don't, then you can't find positivity in that, or it becomes even more challenging too. Harry, you said that if you don't want to do it, i.e., you're not positive, then you won't want to move towards your goals anymore or have the motivation to, which makes them unattainable. Excellent. Sadana and Harry, thank you for your answers. Um, thanks so much for your answers there. I would definitely agree with those. You guys are really, really good. Honestly, I think you guys should be running the session instead of me. Brilliant. I think Farah, you had an answer there. I think the chat bots said it was a bit too long. Just shorten it a little bit because I would definitely love to see what your contribution is. Manish, you said that you agree with Harry. Excellent. I also agree with Harry, and I also agree with Sidana. I think it's really important. Harry, you've asked in future sessions will we go over revision and exam technique? Actually, yes, we will. You've got mocks in 5 weeks. Well, towards the end, I will pull up my little schedule for the Study Squad series, and I do definitely know that making better notes is a session that I have planned, and using past paper questions and exam resources is another one that I've got planned. So 2 separate sessions. I just need to see when they are, but towards the end of the session, I'll be able to tell you when that will be. So you can definitely tune in then. So Farah, you said that you're less inclined to try your best to achieve a goal if you have a negative attitude towards it. Being positive towards something motivates you the most. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So firstly, thank you for sharing. And I think that goes for a lot of us. I think if you have a very negative mentality towards something, you just don't want to do it. But if you think positively, you're more inclined to do it. Your goals then become more attainable, and that's just by adding that element of positivity in there. So I think that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And Harry, you're welcome. You're more than welcome. Now, relevant, also important. So your goals need to be relevant to you because it establishes a drive. Now, um, again, this is something which we talked about before. The R in SMART goals is sometimes referred to as relevant or realistic. Um, but I guess it just reinforces the importance of your goal having something to do with you in the first place. Now, that might seem like a bit of an odd concept. You might think to yourself, well, how could a goal that I set be irrelevant to me? It happens all the time. I think when we set goals and we're not too sure of why it is you want to do something, it becomes very challenging to push yourself to achieve that goal. It becomes very difficult to be positive to try and attain that goal. So ultimately, it's of the utmost importance that your goals, you understand why you're going for what you're going for. Okay, so that's what I would say there. And then time specific. So this is something that I also want you all to sort of share. Why do you think that positivity ties into the idea of goals being time specific? So what do you think the link is between goals being time specific and you being positive? How can being positive help you with time specific goals? Or how do time specific goals feed into positivity? It could be either or, it could be both, work in both directions, but I would definitely love to see what you guys think about that question. So do pop something in the chat. Um, It'll be very interesting to see what you guys come up with. Everything you've come up with has been brilliant so far, um, and I'm sure your answers here will be no less. So, Sadhana, you said that being positive will help you procrastinate less because you want to achieve your goal. So, yes, I would agree with that because if you're positive, you'll always have more drive to try and achieve it. Um, Harry, you've said as well that. Let me have a look here. Oh, I just saw your message with the bots taking it away, but I think I just about caught it there before it went. Um, Again, it just sort of echoes what you were saying earlier, um, which was sort of the idea that if you if if you're positive, you're more inclined to try and achieve something. Um, Manish, you said that being positive makes you want to try harder. I would definitely agree with that. So then, therefore, you're more likely to try and achieve your goals in whatever time period that you have sort of established. Let's see. I'll give you guys just a couple more minutes in case you do want to share an answer at all. And then what we'll do is we'll wind down with some general questions that you might have about the series or that you might have in general about how to study more effectively. And then then there's a sort survey that I want all of you to do. Um, but we'll get to all of that really shortly. So Robex Knight agrees with Manish, so thank you for that. Definitely agree there as well. Okay, we'll give it one more minute or so, and then we'll move on. Okay, right. So I think we'll move on really shortly. Just as a quick reminder, Samuel, thank you. I would really, really appreciate it all if you could give some feedback on how the session has gone so far. I know all of you have said that you've enjoyed it. Thank you. I'm glad you have enjoyed it. But one of the things that I want to try and do is make this experience as beneficial to you as possible. So, before you do leave the stream, please make sure you just click on the link that Samuel has popped in the live chat. and do fill in that survey. It's really, really short. It'll take no time at all. It helps me improve these sessions, and also helps my tutor, and it helps them put together more resources to help students, such as yourselves, achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So do make sure you fill in that survey before you leave the stream tonight. Okay, so now these are a few phrases actually that I want all of you to share. Farah, you said that the stream's ending already. You feel like it's gone by quickly. Well, time flies when you're having fun. I'm glad it's you've enjoyed it. I will hang around for an extra 5 minutes or so towards the end as well. If you do have any other questions or you just want a bit of a chat about studying as a student, and I'll offer any advice that I can give. But these are just a few phrases that I found. And they're taken from a book about positive things. It's a parenting book. It's about positive things you can say to your child, but I think it's still relevant to all of us. So phrases like, I'm grateful for you, and I'm proud of you. You did that really well, and I'm listening. Questions like, that's a great question. It's good to be curious. You're intelligent. I'm excited to work with you. This is all. These are all phrases which I think we can all use as students. Now, these are things that you can tell yourself. These are things that you can tell colleagues. I know we've not talked about it too much, but do remember that positivity is something that we can share, and I think in sharing it with your fellow students, it makes such a difference. Okay, so don't be afraid to use any of these phrases. Now, I don't know how clear it appears on the screen right now, but if you do want a list of these phrases, I'm sure we can figure out a way to just send the table to you, even if it's just this page. I'm sure we can find a way to sort of send it out to anyone who's interested. Um, but try and incorporate one positive phrase every single day, okay, when it comes to your studying. Before you sit down to do a mock pass paper, give yourself some positive reinforcement. Tell yourself that you are intelligent and that you are capable of doing well in this mock exam. And when you finish that mock exam, just tell yourself, well done for doing that mock exam. Whether it was easy, intermediate, or challenging. When you're marking it and you get your final mark, give yourself a pat on the back. There is positivity in succeeding, and there is also positivity in achieving a grade that is less than what you were expecting. Because you can then identify areas for you to grow. And there's magic in that type of thinking. Okay. Rightio. Well, I think that's really the end of the stream for today, or at least it's the end of this session, rather, about positivity and the power of positivity as a student. I hope all of you found it really, really useful. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Again, do remember to tell us how we can improve these sessions, and that can be about my delivery. It could be about the background music, if it was too quiet, if it was too loud. Maybe it's that these sessions aren't interactive enough. Maybe they're too interactive. Any ideas you have about how we can improve these sessions, do put them on the survey, because it helps me and it also helps my tutor. And between the two of us, we can put together resources that help you students be the best that you can be. But that is everything I have to say about positivity. I hope all of you found this incredibly helpful. I will hang around for 5-10 minutes or so. So if anyone does have any questions, then by all means, do pop something in the chat. It could be anything about study skills at all. Sadhana, you said thank you for the session. You found it really helpful. I'm glad you found it really, really useful, because that's what I want to do. One of the things that I find is that I want to give positivity to students. Now, that isn't to say that I didn't have a positive experience as a student. I think that for the most part, all my teachers were really positive. But I want to share that with all of you, and I want to help all of you grow. So I'm glad you found the session helpful. Manish and Revex Knight, you're welcome. Thank you for joining this evening. There is no stream without the viewers, so thank you for being a wonderful viewer this evening. Um, it's been fantastic. I'm actually going to switch over here, just so that's a bit better now. Excellent. So we've got rid of the PowerPoint. It's finished for today. Um, so Harry, we've got a question from Harry. So you want to start revising? Is reading exercise books, doing past papers, and reading school resources a good idea, or are there better methods? Well, to answer your question, I think effective studying is a multifaceted process. Okay. Now, I remember when I was a student, one of the mistakes that I made was that I would just read notes over and over again. And this is something that I'll talk about in a later session. But what's really important is that you challenge yourself in different ways. Now, I am a huge advocate of past paper questions. And the reason I am is because they give you a really realistic expectation of how you'll actually be assessed in the summer or the winter, depending on when you're doing your exams. And it also just sort of helps you apply what you've learned to the exam as well. So, in short, I would say what you've listed is a brilliant way to start studying. So read exercise books. You make notes and doing past papers. I think they're all brilliant ways to revise. I think the important thing is reinforcement. So when you've done a past paper, identify the areas where you lost marks and then focus on those ones. Whether it's exam technique or just going back through the content, just feed that back into the system so you have a positive loop almost. But I hope that answers your question, Harry. Really good question. Farah, you've said, how do you deal with teachers that don't teach the subject very well? Well, this would be where I plug my tutor. I am going to plug my tutor, become a student on my tutor. That aside, though, I think this is really dependent on what level you're at, but I'm not going to I'm not going to sort of say, well, you can't do this at GCSE and you can do this at A level, because I think any student is more than capable of doing anything if they put their mind to it. So I've had experiences where I felt I haven't quite gotten the subject when someone's taught it. I think it really depends on the subject. You can always ask your peers if they feel in a similar way, and if they do, you can always form a study group. Sometimes it's a case of not even knowing where to start. YouTube has some absolutely brilliant resources out there, depending on the subject. There are really good YouTubers out there that do a good job of explaining a subject and sort of condensing it, breaking it down. So there's that. There are individuals on my tutor that are more than happy to help at any time. There are also CGP books. I only mention the CGP books because I think they're quite good, apart from the bad puns that are in there, although they are a bit funny, depending on which pun it is. That's also an option. I think the most important thing is you identify why it is you don't quite get the subject from that teacher early on. And the reason that I say that is because if you address it earlier on, then there's less stress and there's less need to almost cram everything towards the end. If you address it sooner rather than later, you can identify what resources are available to you and then make use of those resources as much as possible. I hope that answers your question, Farah. If it does, fantastic. If it doesn't, then by all means say so in the chat now. That's also okay. Harry, your main concern was that you didn't want to waste time. Again, totally understandable. I've talked about how goals are time bound, and how you only have X amount of time, particularly as a student at GCSE and A level. You have exams coming around the corner, and so you want to think about how you can study the most effectively. I think what's important for most subjects, as a science tutor, I can only really speak on the sciences, but it's a marathon. Okay, give yourself the time to learn things over time. Okay, don't try and cram everything all in at once. So learn your content slowly over time, practice past paper questions over time, and over time you'll build a much stronger foundation of knowledge that you can then use in your exam. Is what I would say. Farah, you said that it was helpful. I'm glad it was helpful. I guess the fact that you found it helpful means that I have some level of credentials to wear this lab coat. It's actually a lab coat from when I was an undergraduate. Actually, it feels a bit weird wearing it now. Actually, so Farah, you have asked how do you create an effective study schedule? So creating an effective study schedule, I think, is dependent on what your routine is like already. This is actually one of the sessions that I have planned, but to answer your question now, um, it's all about setting realistic expectations and sort of breaking them down um, and almost saying to yourself, okay, well, what is it that I want to study today? And why do I want to study what I'm setting out to do today? Okay. Um, it's about consistency. So don't create a study schedule that you'll dislike. When I was in year 12, for instance, so when it came to like Easter leave, where you kind of you're revising for mocks. I was sort of I'm a morning person, so I'd wake up, study for a few hours, maybe like 3, 4, okay, take a bit of a break, okay, study a little bit more and have lunch. My downtime was playing video games, so um, Sonic Adventure 2, really old school things. So I'd play that for a few hours, go on the treadmill for a bit, and then maybe revise for an hour more in the evening, and then just relax. What's important is that you fit studying in around what you're doing in a sustainable way. Um, a study schedule is only as effective as it is consistent. So I wouldn't say it's effective to study loads and loads in a short period of time and then nothing. Create regular gaps, regular periods of time in which you can study, but also regular periods of time where you can rest. So you give your mind time to actually consolidate what you've learned. I hope that's helpful. Harry, you're welcome. I do chemistry lessons. I do both GCSE and A level. Um, my profile is on my tutor. If you just search my name, just Nketia, the names should be in the description. And you just hop onto my tutor, send me a message there, and then hopefully, um, if I can support, then I'll be more than happy to. Manish, you said that you're doing 11 plus and you can control how much you do. Fantastic. I'm glad that you do. Control is really important. It is about, um, I suppose, self control is quite important. It's about knowing when enough is enough, but also knowing when you can do more. Okay, it's about responsibility and holding yourself accountable. You know, but then holding yourself accountable in a positive way, not in a negative or a detrimental way, because it's really easy to do, and that's not good as a student. Ravex Knight said, sorry, I missed that before. You're welcome. Don't worry about calling me sir, though. I still think I'm too young to be called sir. But you're welcome. That's absolutely fine. Okay. So, um, I will give it a couple more minutes, and I think then we'll stop the stream for today. Actually, no, Harry, that's actually one thing I did forget. Sorry. Um, I know you were asking when exactly my sessions were on exam practice and exam technique. Um, Let me pull that up actually because I do have the schedule. So okay, so sessions 7 and 8 are it's towards the end actually. Now that I think about it, so towards the end is when I do have it was when I had planned to do note taking, and then 8 being past paper questions. Um, I mean, what I would say, since your mocks are in 5 weeks, if you find me on my tutor, you just send me a message. We can arrange a free meeting, and I'd be more than happy to sort of talk to you one on one.